around the world, and conflicts continue, places like Ukraine and Gaza. Those are places we're thinking about today. So as we center our hearts, we wanted to share what the goals for our session are. Julia and I will be introducing you to a perspective we hold on culturally responsive math teaching. We're hoping to teach you a little bit about a practical lesson analysis tool that we've developed over a number of years that will help you refine and reflect on teaching culturally responsive mathematics. And of course, we're going to model and share with you some specific techniques that you could walk away with today and try in your own classrooms. And we will be sharing our contact information again. We'll put it back up, don't worry. So we were hoping to just get a little bit of information from you all about your relationship to culturally responsive math teaching. Maybe you are coming in with a lot of your own experience. Maybe you're wondering what it is because you're new to it. If you wouldn't mind either visiting the link, and I'll post it again in the chat, and just logging. It's a one-question survey that's just a little bit of locating and information for us about what is your relationship to culturally responsive math teaching. You can also use the QR code that we have on the screen if you happen to be situated in a way to just grab your phone and do that. But otherwise, you can grab that link in the chat. And I'm going to see if I can share some live results as people actually respond here. So let's see if I can refresh my results and see kind of how things are shaping up. Okay, responses are coming in. So just to highlight that the choices you have here to share a little bit, are you new and you're excited to learn? Are you familiar, but maybe you worry about the political pushback from doing it? Do you think you know what it is, but maybe you could also use some clarification and that's why you're here today with us? Or are you familiar and you already try some things out in the classroom? Or perhaps you're crushing it. You are way steeped in culturally responsive math teaching and you're just here to learn more and get some additional ideas. So we'll give that a minute or so. People able to find the link in the chat? I think you can see that there. All right. This is good. I like to see that we're trending towards, I think I know what it is, but could use some clarification. I'm going to refresh one more time and see if we can get the shape of our, the data is shifting. Anybody noticing and wondering anything interesting? Let's give it a few more seconds. And this will be some formative information for myself and Julia. Very nice. With 45 responses, and I know we have about 100 in the room, so I'm just going to see if we can get closer to the actual amount of people in the room. And that's great. Okay. We have a few people here who are crushing it and want to learn more. I love seeing that, and I appreciate you joining us, even though you're perhaps feeling well situated. We always have more to learn. And I want to welcome those of you who are here because you have some thoughts about it, but could use some clarification. And I appreciate those of you expressing that you're familiar, but worry a little bit about the context and the pushback. So we'll move on with our presentation for now. And thank you so much for giving us a little information about where you're coming from today. Julia, you want to take this part?
Yeah. So, Maria and I have been doing this work for now well over 10 years. And we've been thinking very deeply about what culturally responsive math teaching looks like and how we might define it. And so here's our working definition. Culturally responsive math teaching involves a set of specific pedagogical knowledge, dispositions, and practices that privilege mathematics, mathematical thinking, cultural linguistic funds of knowledge, and issues of power and social justice in math education. Culturally responsive math teaching interrogates and innovates mathematics instruction to be a transformative and humanizing experience for everyone. And we hope that this is, as we go through these examples and resources that might be supportive, you'll see how this particular definition might be reflected in that work. Can we go to the next one? So one of the things that I think is important, we ground our work, both the theoretical and the research roots, in three general areas. Pedagogical content knowledge, that you probably have heard about. It was in the video actually earlier around. That's the knowledge of how to teach a particular content area. And in our case, it's mathematics. Culture responsive pedagogies, which have been, grounded and developed from the field of multicultural education and culturally relevant and responsive education. We draw from Geneva Gay's work and Gloria Ladson-Billings' work. And then rehumanizing mathematics, which has been sort of on more recent discussions around rehumanizing, although we've talked about math as a humanizing endeavor. But sometimes as we have drifted away and really focused on test scores and sort of objectified ways of thinking about math, we've moved away from the humanizing part. So we need to rehumanize it back. And so Rochelle Gutierrez is a person who I look to in her scholarship to help us think about that particular area. So all three components are part of a culture responsive math teaching approach to teaching mathematics. You can keep going, or you want to go?
I'll go. We work together a lot, so we just kind of throw things around to each other. So at this point, we wanted to, with that grounding and that definition, offer you a tool. So we developed this tool. We built on the protocols and research of others to create what we're calling the Culturally Responsive Math Teaching Tool, or for short, we call it the CRMT2. We had a lot of fun discussions as to whether we should call it CRMT squared, 2, what are we talking about, or double T, and we landed on the CRMT2. This is a lesson analysis tool that has also been used to help refine teacher practice that we like to put directly into the hands of teachers to help them think about how they both work with their curriculum to refine it and make it more culturally responsive to students, and select and develop their own tasks to do in the math classroom. So we're going to make sure that we give you the link to look at this. I'm going to put one link in the chat that will take you to the website for the book in which we have published this. And if you scroll down on the right-hand side, you can access a free copy of the tool. So that's one way to look at it. But if you're having a little bit more difficulty navigating websites while you're here in the meeting with us, I'm going to give you a direct link also from the same copy, but we put it in Google Drive, right, Julia? And this should be accessible. If somebody wouldn't mind just trying that second link I put and tell me if it's viewable or not, I would appreciate it, just because we're trying to make sure that it's available to you right now to have a look at it. Okay, thank you so much. I got the confirmation that people can look at it. So the tool that we developed, as we look at it together, we wanted to really draw on this idea of knowledge as woven, right? So as we teach mathematics, there are aspects of culturally responsive mathematics teaching, key dimensions that we're about to look at together, that we really want you to keep in mind that no single dimension defines culturally responsive math teaching, but think of it as a weaving together of core key dimensions and aspects of culturally responsive math teaching. Okay. Okay. Julia, I'll hand it back to you to talk just a little bit about the framework.
All right, great. Thank you. So we have what we're calling three main strands: knowledges and identities, rigor and support, and power and participation. And within those strands, we have these key dimensions, and the colors actually matter. So the colors we chose as we were thinking through our framework and how it was going to be represented. We chose the colors of Mardi Gras. So does anybody? I didn't know if anybody's from Louisiana, but Mardi Gras colors are green, gold, and purple, and the green stands for faith. The gold stands for power, and the purple stands for justice. And so those three colors are reflected, and the meaning of those colors are reflected in our framework. So the first one is knowledge and identities as one strand. And we really thought carefully about which dimension would be sort of first. And we think of these as strands, but something has to go first. So we wanted to center knowledges and identities of children and their families. And particularly, we wanted to focus on the culture and community funds of knowledge. And each one of these dimensions have sort of a quick definition, and we'll also be going through sort of a essential question that is connected to each one of these dimensions. But centering culture and community funds of knowledge, and that means helping students connect math with relevant and authentic issues and situations in their lives. And then this idea of rehumanizing math, so supporting creativity, broadening what counts as math knowledge, and affirming positive math identities for all your students. The third dimension in this particular strand is honoring student thinking and ideas. So creating opportunities to elicit and express and build on student mathematical thinking that they're already bringing into the room, all they're bringing into the class, and can be recognized in multiple ways. So through gestures, pictures, words, symbols. That multimodality is what we're also emphasizing here. And then rigor and support is the idea of how do we, if we're going to engage students in sustaining high cognitive demand tasks, we want to make sure that they're supported in doing so. So these dimensions really focus on sustaining cognitive demand, and I'm sure you all know cognitive demand, and that is tasks that engage students in analyzing, exploring math concepts. So it's not just rote memorization, but students are in the process of developing critical analysis skills and engaging in problem solving and reasoning. Scaffolding up is what we call when we're maintaining high rigor with high support for all students so that they can engage and keep engage in the high cognitive demand tasks and keep the cognitive demand high. And then affirming multilingualism. And this is really important for us in that we wanted to make sure in previous drafts of this work, we had spaces for multilingual learners, but it usually was from a scaffolding up perspective. So how do we make sure that we make space for our our multilingual learners? But we want to really uplift the idea that these students are learning in multiple languages, and we need to be able to affirm that aspect of them, that part of who they are. And so affirming multilingualism is we wanted to pull out as an important dimension in the rigor and support strand. And then power and participation, well, that is about rethinking how you engage students in the classroom, distributing mathematics authority. So we want the intellectual authority to be much more broad than just landing in the where teachers are the intellectual authority or the book is the intellectual authority. We're talking about much more of a broad participation and making space for multiple forms of how you might communicate that knowledge. Disrupting status and power. So math classrooms, like all schools, engage and must are impacted by the social forces of the world, of our society. And that means that things can get reflected in our classrooms that might reflect certain kinds of stereotypes about who can do math, and might also recreate particular harmful power relationships within the classroom. And so we have a specific dimension that's talking about disrupting status and power. So disrupting status differences, minimizing status differences, disrupting entrenched stereotypes about who can and cannot do math, and trying to provide more equitable relationships within mathematics classrooms. And then our final dimension in this framework and in our power and participation strand is analyzing and taking action. So ways in which mathematics can be used as an analytical tool to critique and address power relationships and injustice in their lives. And so that is our framework. And we invite you right now to take a look at the tool, and perhaps that we can put back up that other slide deck with the 9 dimensions. And we want you to think about, okay, so what's familiar here? What are you already doing? I guarantee you, every teacher, every person on this presentation is doing something in that's connected to culturally responsive math teaching. So we want you to think about what's familiar, what resonates, what might be new or is going to stretch you, and any kinds of questions that you might have. So take a moment, you can put it in the chat, about what resonates with you, about where would you locate your own work, your own math education work. What do you emphasize? What is really speaking to you about a specific strand or dimension? We'll start there. So give you a few seconds, if you will. You can put something in there. What sort of stands out to you that resonates with you as an educator, a math educator? We have 106 folks in here, so ready, go. Yep, Summer says scaffolding up. Shaban says making space for multiple forms of knowledge. Daniel says what's standing out for me is that I'm good about 1/3 of it. So which 1/3? I'd be curious. Scaffolding up, rehumanizing math, making math creative, scaffolding up. All students are included. Thank you for sharing. Using street data and data meetings, that might be focusing on analyzing and taking action, right?
Very nice.
Sandaya says affirming multilingualism, honoring student thinking, affirming multilingual. This is awesome.
And I guess the other half of that question is also, if there are any that feel newer or maybe a little more slippery to get a hold of, feel free to comment on that as well, right? Like, what are the ones that you're still feeling like you need to grow into? Keeping in mind also that all of this is contextualized in your place, right? Informed by those big discourses of who can or can't do math that are perhaps both locally constructed and globally constructed, right? And so disrupting status and power, that's a great one to be wondering about, you know? Okay.
And Stephanie, who's moved from maybe teaching to a specialist, looking at wanting to focus on power and participation, maybe that's sort of a new stretched.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get into strand 1.
All right. So we're just, our goal here is to, again, as a level of introduction. So we're going to give you some things for you to think about across the 3 strands. So the first strand is knowledges and identities. And the activity that we have that we're going to share with you is called Mathematizing the World. And so this is a take it strategy. So you should be able to do this, tomorrow, or introduce this to teachers tomorrow if you'd like. Why don't we go for the first one? So we want to take a look here at this image, and we're going to ask 3 main questions. So the first question is, what do you notice? Take a look. What do you notice? You can put that in the chat if you'd like. What do you notice here? There's an image of two kids. There's someone noticed the dinosaur hoodie, trays of pumpkins. Looks like they're outside the store. Lots of pumpkins. Looks rural. Students get to choose their own. Great. Arrays of pumpkins. Excellent. So now the next question is, what do you wonder? do you wonder about this image? Are they on a field trip? Great. How much of the pumpkins cost? Great. How to make it mathematical? Where are they? Where are the adults? Why did they arrange the pumpkins the way they did? Great. All right. So then the third question that we ask is, what questions can be answered with math? What kind of math questions could we ask about this particular image? And some of them have already come up, right? You're already noticing and using words like array. You've already asked about cost, maybe estimating how many pumpkins are on the shelf, what's the average weight. Right, great. How many pumpkins are there? What's the shape of the pumpkins? Excellent. So these three questions, what do you notice, what do you wonder, and what questions can be answered with mathematics, are the three key questions of this routine. This is a mathematizing the world routine that you could do, just like you might do number talks in 10 to 15 minutes. This is a routine that you can do with images with children for 10 to 15 minutes, or could launch a lesson. In addition, we would ask these two other questions. What do you connect with or feel about this situation? And who might care about this situation? So these other kinds of questions kind of try to get at how you, an individual, might connect with something like this. And who would care about taking a picture like this, or what was happening in the picture? Well, we'll go to the next one. Okay, so here is another image. Take a look. And we'll ask the same three questions. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And what questions can be answered with math? So we'll start with, what do you notice? There's a crowd of people gathered. Lots of people. A line of cops blocking the road. Umbrellas. Is this a protest? That's a wondering. Excellent. The people on the right side have umbrellas. How many umbrellas? It's raining. Okay, and so that could be even a wondering. So let's move to wonderings. What do you wonder about this image? Why are the people and the guards gathered? Different shapes of the buildings. That's an observation. Where is this? Are they protecting themselves from the rain or sun? Did a drone take this photo? Great. Now, what questions can be answered with math? Let's put that in there. What questions can be answered with math? How many people? How many people are there? Can the sidewalk help me estimate the number of people? Number of people per square foot. Good. We're getting some ratios in there. How many people per cop? Estimate the number of people. Great. So, what do you connect with or feel about this situation? Looks tenuous. How many people with umbrellas? It's powerful in some way. Okay. So I will tell you that this is an image that a third grade teacher actually showed to her students and their families at a back to school night. And the teacher did this as a way to introduce the families to this routine, mathematizing the world routine. And many of the families that she was working with at the time were actually in that crowd. And that crowd was the summer of 2020. It was taken at a neighborhood up in Seattle area called Capitol Hill. And it was a Black Lives Matter demonstration. All right, we'll go to the next one. And we have to recognize that Black Lives Matter is a global impact. It wasn't just in the US. So these are pictures that were taken from around the world that demonstrates how much of an impact that particular part of our history has been, right? And we were doing this right in the middle of COVID as well. So this is an important component of the work that you can that students were experiencing and that students can mathematize. So the idea here about what makes a good mathematizing the world routine image is that you want to find some kind of image, and I bet you anybody has this on their phone, that would has particular mathematical features that would invite counting or equal grouping or estimation or measurement. And you also want to have contextual features, right? So what will hook students' curiosities or connect to their lives in some way? So those two things need to be taken into consideration when you select an image to do this routine with.
Yeah, and I'll just add that this is a picture I took of my children when we were visiting a farm. So your context matters too, right? So we can't tell you that you should go and use these pictures because we don't know if they would actually relate to children's experience. And we'll talk more in a second about how we think about selecting photos that either provide a glimpse into something or photos that reflect. But I can tell you that like when you take the pictures or your students take the pictures, I find that there's also a different kind of connection and buy-in into mathematizing the image.
And I have a wonderful colleague who teaches in Nashville, who has invited all her students, her fifth graders, to find images, and they do the mathematizing the world routine together with the images from what the kids bring in and what their families bring in. So it can be a very powerful tool to engage young people. All right.
Yes, and thank you for that idea in the chat too. To use the
Yes.
image of the powwow for estimation.
So the idea here is that many people talk about mirrors and windows. I like to talk about mirrors and lenses. So you want to pick things, images, the curriculum itself, math curriculum, should be a mirror and a lens for students. And so mirrors reflect the activities, the places, the places and the traditions that students are doing. Like they reflect ideally what's going on with the families and the communities that you're serving. And then lenses are portals or windows that allow you to analyze and explore something that's new, that's different, that might be that kids will be curious about. And I will tell you that this image of the gigantic crocodile is one of the most popular images that were a part of a research project that I was a part of called Equistem. And it was a math modeling project. And this particular image was designed to provoke ideas. And kids are crazy for like weird stuff. So the gigantic crocodile was very, very, very popular in the kind of mathematizing images that the teachers chose and the kind of math that kids actually engage with. And so you can probably tell that the most popular question was, how long is that crocodile? How big, how tall is that crocodile? That was the most popular question that kids really wanted to know and explored.
And to that point, also, I think earlier in the chat, there was a question that came up about like, well, is a particular photo going to be relatable to all children? And I think one of the reasons why we describe this as a routine where there's opportunities to mirror experience and to have lenses on different experiences is because over time, you can really give yourself that opportunity to have images that might have particular hooks into particular parts of the community and particular children's interests. But when you take that long view, that's how you kind of make sure that you're ensuring that a relevancy to everyone. No single image may do that, but again, culture responsive math teaching, I think, doesn't take the position that one particular context is going to be relevant to everyone all the time, nor should that always be the goal, So that flexibility and ability to say, this time we're really going to look at this kind of image and next time we'll look at this kind of image, I think is an important thing we want to underscore as well.
Excellent point. So just to summarize, the what do you notice question builds observation skills and supports connections. The what do you wonder question builds problem posing skills and fosters curiosity and creativity. and what questions can be answered with mathematics, builds meaningful problem posing and empathy and humanizing skills with mathematics itself. And thinking about going deeper with that part about building meaningful problem posing and empathizing and humanizing skills with math, which is oftentimes not associated with humanizing and empathy, is these other questions here. What do you connect with or feel about the situation? Why is this math question important? Why should we care about the question or issue that's being impacted in the lesson or reflected in, or I'm sorry, in the image? And what else might we, who else might care about the question we've just posed? Why might it be important to that person?
Mm-hmm. Great.
So again, we invite you. There's a website that has a specific planning guide around the mathematizing the world routine itself, and we have examples and a section in our book in it as well about mathematizing the world routines.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, in the 18 minutes we have left, we want to just give you a taste of what these other strands are about. So I want to talk you through a little bit of rigor and support. I think that there are some ideas in here that may be most familiar to those attendees here, because rigor and support, as a reminder, is about sustaining that high cognitive demand, scaffolding students into the mathematics and up into that high expectation, and affirming multilingualism, really positioning multilingual learners as central participants in mathematics activity. So from a high level, if we're kind of thinking about like, so what does this mean I do as a teacher as I'm preparing to teach lessons, right? Well, the first reminder is that we need to select rich tasks that are worthy of our children. I want to give a quick shout out to our colleagues, Lou Matthews, Shelley Jones, and Yolanda Parker on their excellent book, Culturally Relevant Math Tasks. I think it's a great complement to the work that Julia and I also do, and it's a book that I've turned to as a resource. And it really helps us think about like, are the tasks that we're giving to students worthy of our children, right? So often we think about like, is the math hard enough? And really the question is also, is it also a task that is worthy of our children? And then the two things that we think about when we're launching these complex tasks, right? Because when we select these rich and worthy tasks, we find that they are more language intensive. They often are multi-step. Modeling problems are a great fit for this situation, but then it means that we have to have methods to scaffold students into the problem, right? And so they have to understand something about the context and connect with it, which we call connecting with the heart, right? And then we want to scaffold them into being able to do the mathematics, which means we're going to weave those connections from the heart into the head. So both going from, when have I experienced a situation where this thing has been happening, so I can connect with the context, right? How did I feel when it happened? Towards, what does that mean? I'm going to reason my way through for answering this question, right? So one thing that we'd also suggest as a resource, if you're not as familiar with launching complex tasks, is this idea of a 3-read protocol. I provided the link from San Francisco Unified School District here, but because that's the resource that I turn to, where they have a nice write-up about what is a 3-read protocol. But also, if I was thinking about how to plan after I've selected a task, I'd also want to think about what are those probing questions and scaffolding questions that I'm going to keep on reserve or in my back pocket to support kids to scaffold them into the problem. If once we've launched it, they're still, wondering, what am I supposed to do here, right? Thank you for posting those links in the chat, Julia. So to the question of if we could say who the authors of the Culturally Relevant Math Tasks book are, Julia put the link in there. So please do have a look at their work. It's pretty great. Okay, so in terms of how we think about this, and in the strand of rigor and support, this is a task that, let's just say I've selected to do this Abuelo's birthday task, which was adapted from one that Julia and I developed for summer school years and years ago, and is one that you could find on the EquiSTEM website or the Math Modeling with Cultural and Community Context website. So if you need a resource for rich tasks, these tasks often hit the bill, right? So just have a look at the task here. Take a moment to read it to yourself. And I'm not going to, unfortunately, because of our own timing, I'm not going to give you enough time to read the whole thing and do it. But I'll just talk through things that I find are features of the task of maybe why I would choose it for fourth or fifth graders that I work with over here in Oakland, California, is that the context is one that is somewhat relatable or is accessible, right? There's a family, there's a group of grandkids that are trying to figure out how they're going to afford something they want to get for their grandpa's birthday. It's also a modeling problem, which from the perspective of rigor and support means that there is a high cognitive demand aspect in that children have to come up with some kind of unique solution and will be able to provide explicit scaffolds, right? And then from an affirming multilingual learner's perspective, when we contextualize mathematics in stories or understandable contexts, not only does it help the learning of everybody in the class, right? But it gives us more opportunities to affirm the contributions of children who are multilingual and who also have similar experiences that they can speak to and share in the class. So they're also positioned more for success along their peers, right? And it's a sufficiently challenging problem in this case that it's designed as a team task, right? So it's group worthy in some senses of the word. And it gives students an opportunity to share how they would think about it. And then look at what is fundamentally the question here is, what do you think and what is fair in this situation, right? So we're also touching on strand 3 about children's sense of how they apply sense ideas of fairness into the world. Just keep that in mind when you think about where this task is going, what is fair in this situation. So also because of my context, I'm also fluent in Spanish. So I translated the task into Spanish because if I were doing this with fourth and fifth graders that I work with in local schools here, Spanish would be one of those dominant languages where it would be very important to have the task available in that home language. Now, if you're facing a situation in your own context where there's multiple languages spoken, you might think about how you might get materials in those multiple languages, right? Or think about who needs access that you can give your time to, and how are you going to get that other access later. So here's the translation. And in providing the translation, we also give another layer of access to students, right? So then if I'm thinking through the task and how I might launch the task, before I get into reading the actual task, we might start with a discussion of simply putting out the question to students of, have you ever felt like things were not fair, right? What was the situation and how did it feel? Because when they start to engage in that storytelling of situations where things weren't fair, but they had to figure it out, they start to move from that connection of empathy and feeling into how did I think my way through it, right? Yeah, life. Yes, thank you, William. Yes. And then what did you do to make it fair again is also that probing around that we can find solutions, not all the time, but like sometimes we can find solutions, right? Maybe you'll have a student say like, I couldn't do anything to make it fair again. Well, in this story problem, we're going to be able to think about how we make it fair again. And then from there, as a teacher, I might continue to plan, how am I going to document these ideas of fairness that I elicit from students, start to bridge their ideas into the task, and then plan a 3-read protocol for myself that builds on these head and heart connections, right? So when I look back at the task, when I'm thinking about how I'm going to scaffold it, I might start to think through just briefly, what do I want students to be able to know about the task after we've read through it one time, right? This is part of that 3-read protocol. So just to give a quick example, I might want them to be able to say in their own words, what's the situation, who are the people involved, and what else they notice about the context. And then in subsequent readings of the task to launch this complex problem, we'll start to identify quantities, relationships between quantities, and ensure that everyone's clear on what they're actually supposed to be answering about this problem. Okay, so that's a little bit about rigor and support.
Great, thank you. And then so the third strand, again, looking at time, we just want to make sure that we're introducing you to all 3. So the third strand is power and participation, and we're going to just give you a taste of a modeling task as well that looks at racial justice and representation in library book collections. So if we go to the next slide, the Library Diversity Project is a project that was developed that was developed in our math modeling project that we did in 4 different states. And you can read more about it in the Todos special issue on anti-racist math education. This particular project was developed by a colleague named Holly Tate, who is an instructional coach and math teacher in the East Coast. Whoop, what happened?
Sorry, I was trying to look forward in the notes and accidentally moved forward in the whole presentation.
We're back. Okay, so just quickly, the unit plan for the Library Diversity Project. We want you to know that this was not just one lesson; it was a unit. And students, part of this discussion was thinking about, drawing on what is culture, what is race, and having kids engage in those conversations, because it's important to know that kids are already engaged in those conversations. So in schools and opportunities to help us to get to know one another and understand what's going on in the world. You might do different kinds of projects that focus on, developing a cultural map, having kids learn about each other. We also did a notice and wonder or a mathematizing the world routine on an image that reflected diversity in children's books. And so you can see in that smaller, the different groups of kids, and this represented diversity in children's books. And as you can see, the white child has lots of different books that are reflected in these mirrors and different kinds of characters. And as the next representation is animals. They have a big mirror. And then as you go down the line of the different other children, the children of color, their mirrors are broken. Their mirrors, their faces, their emotions are different. And so kids, this is a really nice entryway for having kids. It's a numberless graph, and have kids start to think about, what does this image mean with related to the kinds of books kids might be reading. You do a book sort in the classroom, so classroom libraries, and you gather data. So what is the data? What does our library look like, right? What are books that are like me and not like me? You engage in students in thinking about the racial representation in children's books. You graph the data, right? And then some of our classes use a decision matrix to help them then think about, what kind of books do we need to make the library more fair? And so this is an example of a decision matrix that was used in a first grade classroom. And if you notice that the criteria that were used were given points on a 1 to 5 scale. And those are 5 different add-ins that first graders are now using to come up with a total points. And they would use that information then to make decisions about which books that they would recommend. And that was the taking action part. So kids wrote letters, and they were able to get funding to help make their libraries more fair. We're going to go, again, in the interest of time, I'm not sure we can try to do this. What do you think, Maria? Should we do it? It's like
we should look at student work instead. We have 5 minutes left.
Okay. Well, let's look at the student work instead. We'll keep going. So here's an example of a student's, and this was the 2nd grade classrooms. This is right out of of COVID year, and these children's had already done the book sort. This was their data, and the question was, what would the graph look like if it was more fair, right? And so students then made different representations of what that would look like. So in this particular case, a child thought all the different categories, and you can see that in this particular library, the most books were of animals was first, and white children were second. And across the iterations of this lesson, it was exactly the same thing, no matter where you were in the United States. So in this one, the child thought about ways in which you can make some of the categories get closer to a fairness point. And in this case, they were trying to reach 40, or in some cases 50. reflecting perhaps the classroom demographics of the class. And so you can see the math that the students was doing there with the addition problems. Here, a child was using a number bond to reflect what number that they would want to go from 10 up to 50. And then the final one was a child, again, working toward getting more books that were underrepresented in their class to a particular place on the graph, and writing out their ideas. More American Indian books and First Nation books. We need more AAPI books and Latinx books. So there were particular ways in which they were expressing, both mathematically and in writing, what they think should be done.
Yeah.
You want to take over?
Sure. So we're basically towards the end of our presentation here. But we just wanted to also say that a lot of the ideas can also be found in our book that recently came out called Cultivating Mathematical Hearts. And we do have a discount code for you today. Also, if you just want to keep continuing to discuss these ideas, Julia and I will put our contact information. We really appreciate you coming today and bringing your attention to culture responsive math teaching. In our book, we cooperated also with classroom teachers and a math coach to also get their perspectives and experiences working in culture responsive math teaching. So Holly Tate and Olivia Canning had a chapter in our book that is particularly about how they think about CRMT ideas in a first grade classroom. So there's a connection there to primary grades. Holly Tate also wrote a chapter with Caitlin Kappelwick about the collaboration between Holly in the role of coach and Caitlin in the role of teacher in transforming a fourth grade classroom over time. So it's a really nice story about thinking in the year-long term about working with culture responsive math teaching. And then Melissa Adams Corral also wrote a chapter about her dual immersion Spanish bilingual classroom. So where the actual class was conducted in Spanish, supposedly because it was a dual immersion classroom, but her focus was really on making a translanguaging space. And you can really see that in her chapter. And then I collaborated with my longtime colleague and friend, Talia Kemper, who is an elementary special education teacher here in Oakland. And we also analyzed a little bit about how culture responsive math teaching happens in the space of her classrooms as well.
And we would just like to go back to to also state that in those chapters they use the tool to help unpack what happened in their classroom. So you know that there's ways in which the tool is being utilized to understand and analyze, as both helping to plan, helping to reflect on what happened.
Right. So thanks again for being here. We hope that wherever your heart is, that it's in a joyful place and a place of action. And here's a little bit more information if you would like that discount code for Corwin. I'm also going to move just to show real quick, if anybody's been waiting on a particular resource link, maybe, let's see, anything we need to run over here. Oh, I could put the link for the article from Team if anybody's interested in the chat. Otherwise, I think we've given you everything else here along the way. The Funds of Knowledge survey, I think, is also on the Corwin website, right, Julia?
Yes. So we have a survey that you can give to families to help you understand better possible funds of knowledge, possible context that you can connect the math to. Right. And then finally, I think that we have like one last slide that we can show.
Discount code is Corwin25. Just have to go to the website, Corwin25. All right, that's it.
Yes, so thank you. We appreciate all your work. Thanks and to do this to make math teaching and learning more joyful, humanizing, and just for everyone.
Yes, Kyle, I sent an email about the scavenger hunt symbol because I didn't receive one. There's some questions about it in the chat.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
You know what I can do for you here, friends, is I don't know, maybe I could give you a little hint here. I think I might have an opportunity to give people a free nice little easy to find one today here before I take over the screen. So if you haven't left the room yet, stick around. I think we only have like 1,000 unread emails right now, so I'm just digging slightly.
Oh my
But
goodness.
let's see here. Oh, where did it go? Oh, shoot. It was right there. Where did it go? I was digging it up just in case.
You need to post something on the screen.
Yeah, I'm going to post it in a second. I got to find it first here on the fly.
Okay, if anybody wants to grab this.
Let's see.
I also just posted the link real quick. The one that's journals.charlotte.edu is the article that Holly Tate and colleagues wrote regarding the library diversification project. So if you go to that link, I think you should be able to access the journal and download the PDF, mathematizing representation.
Well, I had it over here. I'll see if I can find it. Okay, well, let's do some wrap up here, and I'll see if I can bring it up. Aha. I found it. Let's see if I can put this in my little slide here, and we'll see if you're paying attention. How about that? If they're not paying attention, they're not going to pick up on it. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and share this slide here. Whoops. That's not going to help us. Let's go just like that. All right. There we go. Okay, so let me get this going. Yeah, trying to find something through email on the fly is not an easy thing to do, but here we go. I'm going to bring this up on our screen. Let me do some sharing. Here we go. Actually, you know what? I feel like this was the most stressful thing I've had all weekend, was trying to find that icon on the fly. But I want to thank our two speakers for spending some time with us here. Hey, let's see the coffees there, my friends. You're coming from the West Coast in North America. There you go. Little bit of caffeine, a little bit of pick me up. I'm already onto my decaf tea here. Friends, if you enjoyed this session, do your speakers a massive favor. Let them know your big takeaways in the chat. And also, sharing on social media can be a great way to not only thank them, give them a little bit of tire pumping so they know the work that they're doing is being heard, but it also helps to share their work across the network. So definitely take some time to do that. Remember, all of these sessions are going immediately up to the Summit website. They also get put into the Academy at the exact same time. So if you're an Academy member already, you can access it through the Academy dashboard. For those who want replays for longer than this evening, you can upgrade your ticket using the ticket link on the website. If you bought a 1-week ticket and you're realizing, wow, 1 week for $29 or 2 months for $39, I feel like I've been had here. I feel like I've been cheated. Feel free, send us an email. We will send you a coupon code that will get you upgraded so that you can take advantage of the 2 months of access. I can't seem to find the icon anywhere, so I apologize for those who, don't know or didn't see it on the screen. But you know what? I don't know.
That works.
I don't know what else to tell you. But here we are. We have our certificate of attendance. You will get those by the end of day tomorrow if you are on a free ticket. If you are on a paid ticket where you have extension for the week or for the next couple of months inside the Academy, you will be able to generate certificates of attendance as you complete sessions. So feel free for doing so as well. Friends, I want to thank you all. Let's give a big wave to our wonderful, wonderful presenters.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for all of the help and inspiration. And friends, we look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. Keep on learning, everyone.